are these sanctions that have been rolling out in successive days and over the last couple of weeks, are they having an effect?
Undoubtedly. In fact, it's difficult to talk about this as sanctions. This is essentially another form or another facet of warfare. There's never been sanctions like this placed on a country as embedded into the global system as we have right now against Russia. The fact that they hit everything and every industry, there's more than 250 companies that are now not doing business in Russia. Its financial system has been crippled. It looks like it's going to be defaulting on its sovereign debt. Moreover, its ability to raise revenue internationally through the sale of oil and gas is now under question with boycotts and embargoes being put on even by those countries that previously would buy this. So this is a devastating aspect to the war, which is having a real impact, not just on the elites, where I think we were talking about earlier, targeted sanctions, but really on every single Russian. Russians now can't buy foreign currency. They can only take out of the country a very limited amount. Consumer goods are off the shelves, and it looks like the internet soon will start going away, largely because of the fact that those upstream internet providers that used to sell connectivity to Russia are no longer willing to do so because they cannot get paid.
Yeah, it's like the new Iron Curtain in a way, because before the fall of the Soviet Union, uh, there were like two solitudes, right? There was very little interaction economically. But let me say this: I mean, Russia is a huge part of the global economy. Yes, it's 10% of oil and gas, but it's the number one provider of wheat to the world economy, and Ukraine is the number five provider of wheat. So are we looking at, in terms of the West, Canada, USA, other places, what sort of impacts are these sanctions or this pariah state status of Russia going to have?
Well, I mean, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, these are the unknown unknowns that we're now starting to face. You're absolutely right. You know, globalization and the way that we've come to understand it in the last 31 years as a tightly knit system of supply and demand and supply chains has just been rendered asunder. You're right. You know, the oil and gas component is well known, but Russia's supply of rare earth minerals, titanium, gold, and others, which are critical across all industries, it's going to have tremendous shocks. The only hope we can really have right now, I think, in terms of understanding liability on it, is that this conflict is relatively short, so that some degree of stability in global supply chains can be reasserted. Because otherwise, we're looking at a longer cycle of unpredictable pricing, unreliable supply chains, and a lot of things that we've grown used to suddenly going in a completely different direction. And I think your point about wheat is a really good one. Look, that 80% is wheat that's imported into the Middle East, and that's an area and a region that's already under crisis politically. What happens when prices start spiraling out of control there? You can be looking at another cycle of violence and unrest besides the one and the mess that we have in Ukraine.
Do you think Russia has crossed a Rubicon, though? I mean, in a sense, there, when you look at Russia, you see an unreliable supplier now. So even if the war on Ukraine ends by some magic, is that assessment going to change, or is it going to be embedded?
Well, it really depends which way the war goes. You know, if we hypothesize on one hand that Russia is successful in Ukraine and we settle back into an old Cold War, then perhaps just like during the Cold War we had trade, that will become the reliable source of trade. If, however, there's blowback in Russia and you start seeing regime change in Moscow rather than in Kiev, then we're in a whole different ballgame. We're back to the early 1990s in terms of what happened in the Soviet Union, which means that it'll take, you know, years, if not a decade, before we see some kind of stability. And I'd add here, you know, that Russia is in a unique pariah position now that it has very few outs. No cargo carrier, meaning ocean cargo carriers, willing to take its transit. Even in China, commodities traders are now basically demanding gold or renminbi as payment. They're not taking any other form of payment for contracts on goods. Really, trade for them has become very difficult, and for that reason, the repercussions for are also going to be significant because the ability to avoid sanctions is just not there.
Yeah, it has all these effects because it's not just about the relationship with the West. It's really a worldwide issue that they're facing, and basically they're kind of in denial of service mode right now. It's quite a dire situation for them. We're going to get back with Rafal Rohozinski after the break. More to discuss. Stay with us. We'll be right back.